We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com.
Moving on to Manuel T, who sent graphs. Manuel, Manuel, recently purchased a pair of Ascend Acoustic Sierra 2 speakers, which has been mentioned. He's using them in a 19 by 16 by 8 foot room, nice size there, sitting 13 feet away, powered by an Onkyo TX NR807 receiver with an AV123 MFW 15 subwoofer and Velodyne SMS-1 external subwoofer EQ. Okay. He began by turning off Odyssey multi-EQ in his Onkyo receiver. He manually set the Sierra 2 to an 80 hertz crossover. Okay. He also set the LPF or LFE subwoofer output setting to 80 hertz. He ran the SMS-1 test tone and found a large peak around 30 hertz and a dip between 125 and 160. He was able to use the SMS-1 to tame the peak, but the dip remains. That happens. It is also above the crossover frequency. So should he raise the crossover frequency, or is there some other method for reducing that dip? I see the dip. I see the dip in,
right.
If you're watching the video, the dip is very obvious.
So the before, you had this very large peak that
Right.
was definitely being produced by the subwoofer because the speakers, the Sierra 2s, they're very capable speakers, but they don't go super low and super loud in the bass. So that peak was coming from his subwoofer, able to tame that in the after results using his Velodyne SMS-1, but that dip is still going to be there. And it's up higher than the 80 hertz crossover. So first of all, I wanted to go back to, he mentioned that in his Onkyo, he set the LPF, that's low pass filter, for LFE to 80 hertz as well. You don't need to do that. The default is 120 hertz, and you should leave it at 120 hertz. I don't know why they even give you the option to change it. The LFE is that dedicated 0.1 channel. It is a separate channel, right? So changing that is a little bit like saying, I set the crossover for my center speaker to 80 hertz. How come it didn't change my front, left, right speakers? Right? It's a completely separate channel. LFE is a completely separate channel. That should be set at 120 hertz. There's no reason to ever change it. I don't know why they let you. It's weird, but
Does anyone else let you change it, or is that just an?
Almost all receivers let you change it. I don't know why. It's
why would you do it? Here, just take some of my LFE signal out.
I guess if I don't know, somebody designed a subwoofer that will literally explode if it plays above 80 hertz or something. I don't know. There's no reason. It's stupid, but
that is strange.
That's just a little.
I don't want to hear that upper bass. I just want the lower bass. Forget that. I hate that part.
The SMS-1, it has some interesting connection options. In their own manual, what they kind of suggest doing is configuring your AV receiver to say that you don't have a subwoofer connected, which forces your front, left, right speakers to be full range, right? Forces them to be set to large when you tell your receiver you don't have a subwoofer. They kind of want you to send that full range signal via pre-outs out of your AV receiver into the SMS-1, then allow the SMS-1 to do all the bass management, right? And then you would have to output from the SMS-1 to an external amplifier for your front, left, right speakers, and then use the subwoofer outputs from the SMS-1 to your subwoofers. That's kind of the way they describe it in their manual. That's sort of what they want you to do. But if you don't have an external amplifier for your front, left, right speakers, or you don't have front, left, right pre-outs, or you just want to use the bass management in your AV receiver, then that whole scenario doesn't quite work. Now, there's no problem still using the bass management in your receiver, which is what he's doing, right? He set his front, left, right speakers, his Sierra 2s to an 80 hertz crossover. That's a great starting point. So all the bass from his front, left, right speakers should be getting sent to the subwoofer output of his AV receiver. Now he's sending the subwoofer output of his AV receiver into the SMS-1, and that's the part that he's able to equalize. Now what that means is he's not equalizing what the speakers are doing at all. Right? Because he's not getting a front, left, right speaker signal from the AV receiver into the SMS-1. He's only getting a subwoofer signal.
Just that LFE.
Yeah. So he's only getting the stuff below 80 hertz from the speakers, and he's getting the dedicated LFE channel, but that's not the front, left, right speakers. So the SMS-1 actually has a dedicated left, right output that you're supposed to feed from the SMS-1 to your AV receiver to send test tones, right? So the SMS-1 generates its own test tones. You send those to your AV receiver. Now his AV receiver is base managing those test tones. And what's being sent back to the SMS-1 to be EQ'd is only the subwoofer signal. All right? So all this stuff that he's seeing above, in the 125 to 160 hertz range, the subwoofer's playing up there somewhat, right? It's going up to 160 hertz. It's going to be 24 decibels quieter at 160 hertz, but it is playing up there. But that's largely what's happening from the speakers. Mm-hmm. And the SMS-1 is not EQing the speakers at all. It can't because it's not getting their signal. That signal isn't even being fed into the SMS-1. So to address this dip that he's seeing, you sort of have to think of it in terms of this, right? The test tones are being sent out as a front, left, right signal. That front, left, right signal, in this range above 80 hertz, is being played by his front, left, right speakers and his subwoofer. But the only one out of those three that he's able to EQ is the subwoofer, right? He can't EQ the speakers using the SMS-1 with the way he has things connected. That means you have to address that dip with positioning, right? There's really no genuinely effective way to use EQ to fill in a dip, particularly when that dip is being created by 3 sound sources and you can only EQ one of them, right? Yeah. That is a heck of a challenge.
Yeah.
So would changing the crossover frequency potentially help this? Yes, potentially it could. And it's going to be a little bit of trial and error. And thankfully, when you're using the SMS-1, trial and error is easy because it lets you see in real time that graph changing. All right. The test tones are being played. It shows you the graph on screen and it changes in real time as you alter the sound.
Sounds fun.
So it's a nice little feedback monitor to adjust things. So raising the crossover frequency might help. Lowering the crossover frequency might help. Right? Maybe if you lowered it to 60, you'd actually find that because now the subwoofer is rolling off and is 24 decibels quieter at 120 hertz now, which is still lower than where this dip appears, right? Maybe if you lowered the crossover frequency, you'd actually get less of a dip because that dip is being created because there are 3 sound sources, your front, left, and right speakers and the subwoofer, all playing in that region. That's creating the dip. So maybe if you lower the crossover frequency, now the subwoofer is kind of taken out of the picture, and that 125 hertz to 160 hertz range is only going to be the front, left, and right speakers. Maybe that'll be better. Maybe raising the crossover frequency will be better. I don't know, but at least it's easy for you to check using the SMS-1.
So far we've told him to change the low pass filter back up to where it was.
The low pass filter for LFE inside of his Oncure receiver.
Okay.
Put that back to 120 hertz because that's immaterial. That should always just be there.
And then we're trying different crossovers
for the front,
higher
left, right
and
speakers.
lower.
Higher and lower. Yeah. Because either one might work. Now, if neither of those work, it's time to start, if you're able to, I don't know if you're able to, but it's time to start either changing where you're, if you can move your front, left, right speakers, but that's unlikely. But changing the position of your subwoofer. Yeah. And if you can't change the position of your subwoofer, then you want to start changing the phase, which you can definitely do because the SMS-1 can change the phase of your subwoofer. So it's time to start playing with the phase. Now, again, this real time that you can see on the screen is fabulous because let's say you can't physically move the subwoofer, but we know you can play with the phase. We're only going to focus on the dip, right? But you want to try to adjust the phase of the subwoofer until that dip is, as filled in as you can get it. It might never be perfect. It might not be possible, but maybe you can improve it. And then you go back because the humps will have changed at that point. But you can go back, right? Don't worry about the humps. Only worry about the dips when you're playing with either positioning or phase, right? But try to get the dips filled in, then go back, use the EQ to tame down any of the humps. But that's the approach.
So dip first, then hump later.
That's right. Yeah.
Good advice.
So the reason you're getting this is because you have 3 sources of bass right now in that region, in this 125 to 160 hertz region, but you're only able to EQ one of them, and that ain't going to do it. So you have to play with positioning and or phase.
All right. All right.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.